Hey, one more time for Lucy's. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Thanks so much. I feel really privileged to do this job, and I'm really happy.
But he's 5'3".
I tour for a living, and again, I do this for the stories, and this story blows my mind to this day. A few years ago, I was doing some shows in Philadelphia. Ever been to Philly before? Yeah, really cool town, tough town. It's kind of like the Warriors if you've never been there. It's a very tough town, but fun. I always have a good time when I'm in Philadelphia. And I was doing a show there, and this guy came up to me after the show. He said, JT, I need to talk to you. I'm like, all right. I didn't know him, but I recognized him from previous shows and stuff. I said, what's going on? He's like, I'm having this life event, and I need to bounce it off you. I'm like, okay. He's like, so you know I'm adopted. I said, do now. What's going on, man? He's like, yeah, so my birthday was a few months ago, and I decided for my 40th birthday, my gift to myself was I was going to finally connect with my birth father, who I never met. I'm like, whoa, dude, that's some serious stuff. Okay, what's the story? He's like, so I went to the adoption agency on my birthday, and I got the name, and I ran home, and I put it into the internet, and I got some hits immediately from IMDb, the Internet Movie Database. I'm like, well, that's odd. He's like, right. He's like, you like horror movies, right? I'm like, I absolutely do. Does anybody here like horror movies? Dumb question, but yeah. Okay, yeah. I was like, I love horror movies. It's like, where are we going with this story? He's like, yeah, so I don't know that world at all, but my birth father's name kept popping up associated with some director over and over again, and it turns out my birth father was a B-movie actor. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, and the director whose name it kept being associated with is some guy by the name of Wes Craven. I was like, Nightmare on Elm Street's Wes Craven? He's like, that's the dude. I'm like, who is your dad? I'm all in on this story. He's like, well, my birth father did a lot of smaller roles, but apparently he's most notorious for playing one of the lead rapists in a movie called Last House on the Left. And I went, you look just like that fake rapist. Oh my God, Yikes, I'm sorry. Ugh. Congratulations. Definitely. And he said, yeah, I've never seen that movie. I'm like, never watch it. I'm like, well, where are we going with this sad tale of woe? He's like, yeah, so there's a horror convention in New Jersey called Schiller Theater. I'm like, dude, I grew up in New York. I used to go to that all the time. He's like, yeah, so it turns out a few months ago, my birth father was one of the guests of honor, and I decided I was going to drive there and surprise him and introduce myself for the first time ever. And I was like, there's no way this story ends well, but I'll never sleep again unless you tell me what happened. He's like, so I drove 2 hours to the horror convention, and there was an enormous line to meet my father, and so plus hours. And I was finally second in line, and I slapped my $20 down, and he picked up the glossy 8x10 to autograph, and he said, who do I make this out to? And I found myself looking eyes to eyes with my birth father for the first time ever, and I kind of composed myself, and I said, make it out to your forgotten son. I was like, whoa, dude, that's heavy. What did he say? He's like, well, he looked back at me, and then this weird veil of recognition came over his face, and he stood up from the table and actually took a few deep breaths and composed himself and looked me back dead in the eyes for the first time ever. And he said, far out. He said, far out? Yeah, he said, far out. Did he say anything else? He said, the 70s were a crazy time. Oh my God. After that, he said, we should get a beer together man to man at some point. That'd be cool. I'm like, well, then what happened, man? He's like, well, then he signed my autograph. I'm like, what the fuck did he write? He wrote, to my new son, far out. Love, new dad.
About life advice.
And I'm like, did he keep the $20? He's like, yeah. He took the $20. I'm like, oh my God. He's like, yeah. I'm like, well, then what happened, man? He's like, well, then we exchanged phone numbers, and I haven't heard from him since, and it's been a few weeks. I'm like, oh my God. He's like, yeah, what do you think? I'm like, honestly, dude? He's like, yeah, honestly, I really respect your opinion. What do you think? I'm like, honestly, man, it sounds to me like you just got emotionally raped by the dude from Last House on the Left. That's the worst story I've ever heard in my entire life. My name's JT Habersaat. Thank you guys so much for coming out, Gainesville. Thank you very much.